Hello, I'm Husho, and this is Let's H Special. Scroll down and click on the Read More, explore the links, and become a patron on Patreon to support quality content. I have demonetized my videos here on YouTube in protest of the ridiculous new terms of service. Patreon is the main way in which I receive my support for what I do. If you enjoy what I do, please consider becoming patron. Thanks very much. I decided to do a special video, even though this year I was saying that I was only going to do every other week uploads. But I went to see Blair Witch, which is the third film in the Blair Witch franchise. I was very excited about it because not only of the brilliant marketing that they had done, keeping it under wraps until a couple of months ago when previously marketed as The Woods, it was finally revealed that in fact it was Blair Witch. Advance reviews were very positive. I was also delighted to hear that they had incorporated elements of the rich mythology invented for the first film. If you haven't listened to my Blair Witch memories, one of the biggest parts of the first film was the mythology that was invented for the internet marketing, the website, the legends, all of the things that they invented around the Blair Witch to make it seem like a real legend, to make people feel that it was a more organic myth and something that was ultimately believable because of it. The second film basically eschewed this for what was, at the time, kind of a trend. That's unfortunate. Part of what made the original so special was the fact that they worked so hard to make up for really a very small budget, and they did a great job. The Blair Witch was a sensation. People wanted to believe in the mythology around it. It also spawned a number of games, comic books, novels, all kinds of tie-ins. And that was in large part because the mythology around it was so fascinating and so well built. Blair Witch, this latest sequel, is a much more worthy sequel to the original. It's actually set in the same world, and it follows the adventures of James, who is the brother of Heather from the original film. He never gave up on his sister, and all he wants is closure. He's read the myths, he's read the legends, and he does, perhaps against all odds, believe that Heather must be still out there in the woods somewhere. But in any case, he would just like to find her, living or otherwise, and bring some closure to this most traumatic chapter in his life. His friend Lisa, who obviously cares for him, is a film student, and she wants to document this and their whole exploration as a school project, a documentary. So of course she has all of the latest film toys. I'm going to try and avoid spoilers because I will tell you right now, I would like more people to see this film, and I think it is worth seeing. It's a very good sequel. I've heard a couple of complaints about the film, but most of them are pretty lame, I've got to say. I think the most frequent thing that I hear is probably something that one or two people pointed out and was meant to be taken in context, or may have even been a joking remark. But other people who obviously haven't seen the film are using as a critique, even though they haven't seen the film. So let me just address this right now. Battery life is not a thing. And let me clarify. Yes, cameras do take batteries. Cameras do need to have an electrical charge in order to operate. However, not only is it a precedent in found footage, but also something you don't want to get bogged down by in terms of a narrative. You don't want people to just stop and be like, oh, I need to replace the battery every 5 seconds. This is obviously supposed to be an edited together version, not a real-time version of the footage that was found. That is a concession to the genre. You don't want to sit there for 20 straight hours worth of people farting around in a forest. Also, considering the fact that the Blair Witch and the forest play with time itself, cameras, batteries, and everything else are going to react in an unpredictable and strange way that will hopefully be more effective to add to the frightening atmosphere. Don't constantly fuss about details that really don't matter, and this is coming from someone who nitpicks the hell out of things. I nitpick. I am a nitpicker. I am very picky about stuff, and I will point out stuff that people didn't think of. However, usually when I notice this stuff, it's because it's not a concession, it cannot be assumed or taken for granted, and it was obvious that someone didn't think about it. In this case, it was clearly thought about. Second, yes, they did do too many musical cue jump scares. I will criticize that. There were too many loud noises used as jump scares, and that really kind of took away from some parts of the film. However, sometimes it was very effective. If they had kind of reduced the number of those, it would have been an overall better film. But I'm just going to say that overall, Blair Witch was really good. It was definitely better than the second film. Honestly, I feel like it was better than the first film in terms of building a coherent narrative and making it something that was very immersive, very involving, and evoked the atmosphere, the very oppressive atmosphere of dread and gradually increased dread that the first film also did so well. Instead of being an extended improv exercise as the first was, this was a scripted film, with stunts, special effects, and so forth. As such, it's not exactly the same as the first one, but it does present a scenario that is similar to the first one, except it has all of those things because, well, it actually had a budget. I still respect the first film for accomplishing what it did with so little in terms of resources, but this is, in pretty much every way, gathering all of the best things about the found footage genre and making it into a shining example of that genre. A genre which, more often than not, is chosen to hide budgetary restraints and limitation. There are a lot of bad found footage films out there, is basically what I'm saying here. There are a lot of them that they just make found footage because they don't have a budget. And that's fine, but you still need to give something more than that. The excellence of the original Blair Witch Project was not only in the strength of its actors to go with something that didn't really have a script, but also its production to make it very snappy, very quick, very 1, 2, 3. It built suspense effectively, which is something that a horror film really needs to do. Blair Witch, similarly, has a very tight script and very quick pacing. It didn't seem like an hour and a half. Most all of the characters are fairly likable, although they have their moments. But this is pretty realistic too. Nobody is ever 100% hero or heel. And these aren't the vague, shitified sort of characters that are very common in film and television nowadays. These are genuinely good people who sometimes make bad decisions. It's worth noting that even the relatively rural natives of the area are nonetheless well played and fairly sympathetic. And a lot of this reflects modern events and modern sensibilities. When the original Blair Witch Project was made, everybody shooting video and uploading it to the internet was not really much of a thing. Now it's every day, everywhere. Everybody does it. And a lot of people are just trying to get their slice of the pie. Especially investigators of the supernatural. They're everywhere. So Blair Witch does have a nod to that, and it is a very good nod. The time cycles in it are especially exciting, and I won't spoil too much of that for you, but after the film I was left thinking about the points in time where time kind of wrapped around and things happened in a certain way. It was very good that way. I like thinking about things like that. It also made me think back about the original Blair Witch Project, which I do need to rewatch soon, and I had to wonder if other things were linked to that. Maybe so. The effects were very good and very scary. One thing that I especially liked about Blair Witch is that it's very much a less is more film. Weird sounds, glimpses of horrifying things, and hints of the terrible are what make and build its suspense. That's a good thing. Ultimately, you don't want to be in this forest where you're trapped. Time itself cannot even be taken for granted here. It can't be relied on. It's a nightmare scenario, and there seems to be no easy way out. Or no way out, period. That adds to the atmosphere of despair, which is very good for a film trying to build the suspense. It's frightening because you hope against all hope, but there's such an overbearing air of doom over the proceedings that you probably know how it's all going to go. But there's still that smidgen of hope, which is so important in these films too. Fortunately, it doesn't take long for things to start to happen, which is good because a lot of these films take way too much time to set up something that ultimately could have been done in the moment, or when people are actually doing something, or when they're in a setting that's much more interesting than a bunch of people sitting around an apartment. They do cut to the chase, which is really the best thing that you can do in films like this. Most of the performances were very strong, which is good since it has a very small cast. Ashley was especially sympathetic and generally very likable. Peter, not quite so much, but all these films tend to need a kind of asshole character. And I'm not going to say that he was just an asshole outright, because as I've said, nobody is hero or heel 100%. But if you had to choose the person that throughout most of the film is kind of the one you just be like, really, man? Really? Peter's kind of it. The only other real problem I had with any of the cast was that as it advanced on, Lisa calling to Ashley had this kind of Buster Crab as Tarzan quality to it, and she kept doing it. It was like, Ashley! It was very odd how her voice would break and vary at certain times. But fortunately she stopped doing that. Not soon enough, but, she didn't quite overdo it as much as I feared that she would. Overall, though, I think it's a very well done film. It's a very suspenseful film. It's well worth seeing. And to clarify something from my Blair Witch Memories video, I understand that some people genuinely do get motion sick when they watch found footage things. Just like when they watch things that are ear-mounted cams or head cams or whatever like that, when things are actually moving. I'm not saying that that isn't a real thing. What I am saying, however, is that, like the whole battery life thing that seems to have come around this time, motion sickness was something that some people kind of appropriated at the time when they obviously hadn't actually seen the film. So it was their choice of excuses for acting towards the film with great disdain. I didn't respect that then, and I don't respect it now. Come up with your own reasons, and if you genuinely do suffer from motion sickness, that's fine. You shouldn't be seeing found footage films anyway, because I don't want you to get sick. But when people take that and don't have motion sickness in any way, shape, form, or fashion, that's kind of offensive. It's kind of a dick move. You're basically using someone else's real medical condition so that you can bitch about a film that you've never seen. Don't know about you, but I find that kind of pretentious and annoying. So I just wanted to clarify that. I'm not saying that motion sickness does not exist. I've experienced it too, not in found footage films, but in a particularly poorly shot action scene. It did make me ill at my stomach. That's the exception, however, rather than the rule. I don't usually experience motion sickness, but I know people that do. In fact, I know people that were legitimately made motion sick by the original Blair Witch Project. I know it actually happened. Unfortunately, there's always going to be assholes that try and claim stuff for themselves that they don't actually have, just so they can bitch about something. Not cool. That said, however, I encourage everybody to go see Blair Witch. It's a lot of fun. It's uncommonly well done, especially for a horror film in this day and age. There's not a lot of blood and gore and violence. There's some really scary stuff that's made even scarier by the way that it effectively builds tension and suspense. It makes the few glimpses we get at something truly horrific. It does have something of an abrupt climax, but then so did the original. It preserves that effectively, as well as the rest of the feel of the original effectively. As such, it is a truly worthy sequel, and well worth seeing. See it in the theater if you can. It's the perfect thing to get you in the mood for the season of Halloween. But in any case, I'll be back next week with another episode just for you. Remember to follow the links, follow me on social media, and think about becoming a patron. Patreon is my primary source of support, and it really means a lot to me. Thanks so much again. I'll see you next time. Bye.